Hi people, my name is Jeff and today we are going to be doing another computer-based tutorial. Today we will be installing a web server on a Ubuntu-based machine. For this you will need the latest ISO file distribution from Ubuntu. I'll have a link in the description to where you can download this. For sake of time, I have already downloaded it in advance. So to start off, we are going to create a new virtual machine. We are going for a custom install. Workstation 16.x compatibility. We will choose the ISO file for the operating system later on. We want a Linux-based machine and we want it to be prepped for Ubuntu. We are going to be calling this Ubuntu web server. And if you want it to be anywhere else on your system, then you just click on Browse and select the place where you want this machine to be created. We are more than fine with 2 processor cores. And 4 gigs of RAM is going to be more than sufficient. You can get away with 2, however, there are some I would not recommend going lower if you want to perfectly follow this tutorial, and we'll get to that later. We are going to be using NAT for our network. It is going to recommend that we use LSI logic for our input-output. Just going to go with that. And it recommends that we use the SCSI interface for our storage, so we'll just go with that. Want to create a new virtual disk. We are not going to need more than 20 gigabytes of storage space, so that's more than fine. We can always increase this later using LVM. And this is what the actual file for the virtual machine will be called. So with that, we have all of our configuration here. We're just going to click Finish. Now we are going to click on the CD DVD SATA option here, which says auto detect for the moment. We want to specify our own ISO image, so we'll just use ISO image file. And it has already pre-selected the Ubuntu version that I downloaded because I've used it a couple of times before. If your ISO does not appear in this drop-down list, just click on Browse and navigate to it. With that, we have chosen our ISO file for the operating system and we can power on our machine. And now the Ubuntu server install is going to begin. This install is going to take a while and can be... No, it actually went faster than I expected. So for this, we will be using English as our base language. In my case, I am going to have to choose a different keyboard layout. This might not be necessary in your case, but I am using the German keyboard layout. So I need to select that. If you're using the regular American QWERTY-based one, then you don't even have to change these settings. You could also use Identify Keyboard, which will ask you to press several buttons on the keyboard to confirm what version you're running. I know I'm running German, so I don't need to do that. If you're not sure about what keyboard variant you're running, just use the Identify Keyboard option. Here it's going to ask us if we want to have DHCP handle our IP address, and for this example, it's more than sufficient for us. So we're just going to hit Done. We do not need a proxy server at the moment, so we can skip that. The mirror address is already set correctly, so we can agree to that. We want to use the entire disk. And for future, we want the disk to be set up with LVM. This will allow us to expand the disk in the future if it needs more space. Going to hit done. It's going to give us a report, going to give us an overview of all the settings we have set. And we are going to be okay with that, so we just hit done, go down and hit continue. Now it's going to ask us a couple of things. First of all, your name. Then what we will call our server. I'm just going to call this web server. If I can type the rest of it and not forget about it. Our username is going to be my channel name. If I can type that correctly. I seem to have a problem with typing today. As for our password, we're just going to use something that is easy to remember for us, but is still long and complex enough to be a valid password. Just if you're just using this as a training example, just pick something that is easier for you to remember. Going to hit done. We do not need to install OpenSSH, so we are just going to continue. There is nothing in this list that we are going to need right now, so we're just going to hit done. And now we need to wait for a bit until it's finished installing. Okay, from this point on, it is done installing the operating system, and we can already reboot it to have the operating. At this point, it is already done installing the operating system, and it is currently just downloading security updates. However, we don't really need to wait for that. We can just cancel those updates and boot into the operating system by restarting the machine. So now that that is done, it is going to ask us to remove our installation medium, which is simply done by going to the settings of our machine, to CD DVD, and to uncheck the connect adds power on checkbox. This will no longer connect this ISO file to this machine when rebooting. Hit OK. And then all we need to do is just hit enter. And we'll restart the machine. Now from this point on, you can do two things. You can either keep following the tutorial, or you can skip a bit until we start actually installing the web server. Because I am going to be installing a graphical user interface on this server for the sole reason of making it easy to actually be able to test if your installation worked or not. You don't need to do this and you can skip this, but it's just something that I personally like to do and can always be turned off in the future. Now this is the reason why I specifically said that to follow this tutorial you couldn't assign less than 2 GB of RAM to the machine, because the graphical user interface will need about that amount to properly function. So to do this, we need to first do updates again. Updates to update the app installer or service installer for Linux. We type in sudo because we need administrator right to do it. Apt and update. I am also going to be using D2N. Hit shift to end. Come on. To end symbols to couple another command to this, and that is going to be sudo apt upgrade. Which is going to actually do all the updates that we get with the first command, that we download with the first command. Going to hit enter. It's going to require us to give in our administrator password. Just going to type in yes. And because this is a very new ISO file, this is not going to take long at all. And as you can see, it's already 80% done. With that, the update is done. Next, we are going to need to install the task cell program. And to do that, we again have to give in sudo apt install task cell. And this will allow us to choose a graphical user interface and install them. We test here if we want to install again. We say yes. And it's done already. Now, there is a full list of actual graphical user interfaces that you can choose from. And with task list list tasks, task cell list tasks, you can get a full list of every single one that you can install. We're going to be using the good old standard Ubuntu desktop. Sudo task cell install Ubuntu -desktop and just hit enter. This is going to take a while as it has to download a good bit of stuff. So I will be back to talk to you guys once it's done. With that, the installation of the graphical user interface is done, and all we have left to do is to just restart our machine. Alright, as it normally would, but the moment it asks us to log in, it will give us the graphical user interface. And there we go. And now we just have the regular Ubuntu desktop interface. We don't need any of the security measures, or account coupling, or synchronizing. So we're just going to open the terminal. And now it's time to install our web server. And for this I'll be using Apache. Which is a Linux-based web hosting software package. On Ubuntu it will be called Apache 2. On CentOS it's going to be called HTTPD. It will depend on the variant of Linux you're using. So check beforehand what the package is actually called. In our case, it's going to use sudo apt install Apache 2. Yeah, numlock. It asks us for our password. I really can't type today and I misspelled install. And there it's going. And it's installed. Now to check if it's working, well, if it's running at least, we're going to use systemctl. And we're going to ask for the status of Apache 2. Systemctl, not CL. And we can see that it's running, and we just access it, and we just go back to the terminal using Q or A depending on your keyboard layout. So we can see here that it's active running. Now the final way to test if everything is working correctly, and that's why I installed the graphical user interface, is to open Firefox and just look up localhost. And there we have it. A functioning Apache 2 based web server running on Ubuntu. This page will provide some of the information you need to then install your own website, but that's outside of the scope of this video. So I thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you guys next time. Bye for now.